Yeah, that's gonna take some getting used to. Okay. All right. So welcome back to the discipleship course. And prayerfully you guys are getting equipped for the journey because it is a journey. So first and foremost, we need to recognize that it's a journey because it truly is. Okay. And so within our discipleship course, this is this is a really good one. I mean, it's just so much in here, but this is lesson number 7. Hallelujah. And it is the story of Moshe. All right. So I really like Sister Asa's title. I thought that was good. I and of course that's the first thing we want to do when we're doing this bare bones. So we want to entitle, the chapters that we're going over. And I entitled it Yah, the great and powerful, comes and visit Israel. So I entitled it Yah comes and visit Israel. You know, and the characters within our story were many. There were many characters. There were the children of Israel. There was the king of Egypt and the Egyptians. There was Shiphrah and Puah. There's the house of Levi, Pharaoh's daughter. There's the handmaid, Pharaoh's daughter, handmaid. Of course, the star of the show that everyone knows. We have Mr. Charleston Heston as Moshe. you know, and we have Ruel. And then there's Zipporah, his daughter. And last, but certainly not least, we have Elohim and Yahuwah. All right. So these are our characters. I thought this was a cool picture too. Yeah. Now on to our main characters. Of course, the star of our show, Mr. Charleston Heston as Moshe. All right. And front and center is Elohim and Yahuwah. Now, it's essentially these were the two main characters. And it's what it's all boiled down to, you know. Supporting main character could have been the king of Egypt, but he didn't actually say anything, you know. Well, he did. He said something to the handmaidens, but yeah, he could have been thrown in there. But I chose these two, basically Yah and Moshe, because that's really kind of what it's centered about. And we had the setting. We had the setting of our story, and the setting was, of course, after the death of all the patriarchs of Israel. So it's after the death of Joseph and all his brethren, and the death of the pharaohs that knew Joseph, more importantly. So they're all gone, right? And so that is the setting in which we're coming into. And yeah, I was just downloading something just right then, but not gonna go there. But was good stuff though. Then we have the land of Midian. So it was Egypt. After the death of the Israelite patriarchs. And we have the land of Midian. Okay, and then another setting for the story was the backside of the desert. And then another setting was Mount Horeb, also known as the Mountain of Elohim. And who can ever forget about the burning bush, which was in the Mountain of Elohim, but this was a specific and particular part that was special because it was Kodesh. So much so that Mr. Charleston Heston had to take his shoes off. Amen. So Yah had him remove his shoes. He told him you're standing on holy ground. All right. So that was this is just, there's just so much here. It's like wow, it's just y'all never had me actually study Exodus. So it was just like, not that that I'm praying they come out next or nothing, but it was just he was just showing me a lot. It's a lot. It was just pretty awesome. But the plot is pretty simple, for these 3 chapters. It just centers about the story of Moshe, his birth, his being driven out of Mitzrayim, his entering into Midian, his discovering of Elohim, and his commissioning. And that's pretty much, what the story is about. Now, there are some conflicts, quite a few, that takes place. And of course, oftentimes when you find conflicts in the story, you will find a conflict resolution. And so the first conflict that I have is the king of Mitzrayim versus the children of Israel. So we have this conflict betwixt the king of Israel, the king of Mitzrayim and the children of Israel. They're just, overpopulated. You kind of hear that a bit nowadays, that, that the earth is overpopulated, and they couldn't come up with any better resolution for this issue than to kill people, babies, in fact. Just the men, though. Even though women is the one who give birth to the kids, they want to kill off the men. Say loud. Anyway. So this was a major conflict betwixt the king of Egypt and the children of Israel. Now, a point of interest is why is he referred to as the king of Egypt and not Pharaoh within these passages? Say loud. You know, so the resolve, well, at least the king of Egypt's resolve for this was to kill off the kids. You know, was, I will just kill all the male children. That's how we'll solve that. You know, well, first his resolution was, well, we'll just, you know, we'll work them much harder. You know, and but the more harder they worked them, the more children they had. The more they persecuted them, the more children they had. You know, they only had one thing to do you know, for pleasure. You know, you made life so hard. That's the only thing they had left. You know, but no, seriously, they multiplied like crazy because y'all, you know, sing to it. And so that was his resolution. Was the king of Egypt's resolution, though. There was another conflict with the king of Mitzrayim versus Shipra and Pua. You know, so because of that resolution that the king of Egypt came up with, I don't know who bright idea that was, real brainiac that was, you know, but decided, you know, to utilize the what do you call them? Midwives. Yeah, decided to utilize the midwives to implement the destruction of the male children and keep the population down. Only thing is, they didn't count on the midwives of Israel fearing Elohim. They feared Elohim, so they refused to do it. They didn't do it, you know? And so their resolution, you know, so that brought them into a conflict with the Pharaoh, and the resolution was, well, we're just gonna lie about it. We're gonna they told Pharaoh that when they came in, the babies were already born. They lively. They, you know, the women very lively in Israel. They just pop right on out before we can even get in there. You know, Pharaoh went for that. Shows how smart he was. Shows how smart he was to want to kill the kids to begin with, right? You know. Now, interesting thing is, you know, a point of interest is that Shipra, her name means brightness. You know, it can speak to brightness, and Pua, her name can speak to glittering or brilliancy. So they both, you know, have a correlation to light. Amen. You know, so I thought that was interesting. All right. And let's see, there's another point of conflict. Oh, no, I have another point of interest. And that other point of interest is scripture is clearly depicting these two as children of light. You know, let us also consider the cities that Israel was made to build, which was Pithom, which means city of justice, and Ramses, which speaks to child of the sun. You know, so we see that Pharaoh was trying to snuff out the light of Shipra and Pua by having them kill baby boys. You know, but they wasn't going for it. You know, but I just found it to be really interesting that they had that the king of Egypt had the children of Israel build Pithom, meaning the city of justice, yet didn't want to show justice, you know, and had them build the child of the sun. And when children of the sun began to emerge, children of the sun or / children of the light, tried to snuff out that light, you know. So I thought that was pretty interesting, you know. That's definitely a point of interest. You know, so in these cities which were created to be treasure cities, that is cities that was designed for storage, you would think that they would be trying to store up justice in the city of justice, but there weren't any. There wasn't any, not for the Israelite anyway. And it seemed like, in a city, named after the children of the sun, you would try to store up some of the children of the sun. But instead, you tried to snuff out the children of the sun, the children of the light. So we see something very interesting going on there, kind of a conflict within the conflict. Another point of conflict was Jochebed, which is the mother of Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. So she goes unnamed in the story, but I figured I'd just throw her name out there because I couldn't find anything that spoke of the unnamed Levi woman that would look good on the slide. So Jochebed it is, so it's Moshe's mom versus the king of Mitzrayim. And this was another conflict of interest. Another conflict within the story. She conflicted with the law that he set forth, or the ordinance that he put forth, which was to kill all the male children, and of course she had a male child. And so her resolution was, I'm going to make an ark and I'm going to pitch it with tar and make it waterproof so that it can float on the water, and maybe, Yah will see the kid safe, and she did just that, and Yah did just that, so that was her resolve. I'm not just going to throw them in there and let them drown. I'm going to put them in something and give them a chance. There's another conflict betwixt Moshe versus the Mitzrayim, or the Egyptian. He's seen an Egyptian actually, beating up on one of the Israelites, and he took matters into his own hand and slew him and buried him in the sand. So he had a conflict with this Egyptian, and the resolve was to just kill him. Not the best resolve, even though Moshe is a great guy in scripture, one of the greatest, this was not the thing to do. Do not follow this example, but that was his resolution. And we have, that come out of that exchange, another conflict that arises betwixt the king of Egypt versus Moshe, because he killed one of the Egyptians. So this conflict was resolved, of course, by Moshe getting out of Dodge, or getting out of Egypt. So he leaves Egypt and goes to the land of Midian, because Pharaoh is out to get him. And the ultimate resolution to this conflict was that Pharaoh dies. He stays away until Pharaoh is dead. Now you don't have to worry about him getting them anymore. There's another conflict with the 7 daughters of Jethro over in Midian. It's them versus the shepherds. And this conflict is resolved by none other than Moshe himself jumping in and defending the 7 daughters and helping them water their flock. And so that's how that conflict was resolved. There's another conflict betwixt Moshe versus the shepherds, which I just spoke about. So daughters had a conflict with the shepherds, and Moshe made it his business to make hurt their conflict his conflict. And so he resolved it by beating up on them. And then we have a conflict with Elohim versus the king of Egypt. You know, Yah really didn't take too kindly. He didn't take too kindly to the way the king of Egypt was treating his people. I think I had some points of interest for Elohim. Let me see. Oh yeah, one points of interest for Elohim versus the king of Egypt is Elohim had visited Israel, but they didn't know he had been there. Anybody pick up on that? Elohim speaks about he visited Israel, and he's seen the harsh bondage that the king of Egypt was doing to him and everything, you know, and so he wanted to do something about it, but what kind of stuck out was he visited Israel, and Israel never knew he was there. That's something to think about. See, because a lot of times when we're going through rough situations and circumstances, Elohim may visit us, and we don't even know he's visiting. So that's why it's important for you to act righteously, even when you're going through something. You never know when Elohim may decide to make a visitation. You know, there's another passage in scripture that speaks of Elohim coming into the camps of Israel to deliver them, and an admonition to them to stay clean and holy, lest he see something unclean and turn and leave. Says he will come to deliver them, but if he sees something unclean, he'll turn and leave. You know, so I thought that was very interesting because he did come and visit them in their turmoil, and they never knew he was there. You know, another point of interest is, why did Elohim appear to Moshe on the backside of the desert? Why not the front side of it? Or one of the other sides? Why the backside? And why did Elohim utilize an angel and not the word to get Moshe's attention? Anybody notice that? Yeah, that's some good stuff in there. All right, so that's Elohim versus the king of Egypt, and then we have another conflict with Moshe versus the burning bush. So we have another conflict with Moshe versus the burning bush. You know, he sees this burning bush and, you know, like, bush on fire. All right, maybe it wasn't the first time he saw a bush on fire. But this bush wasn't burning. It was on fire, but it wasn't burning. Interesting thing is that this was like a bramble bush, which is a bush of thorns. Speaks about the bramble bush elsewhere in scripture. Selah. It's a bush of thorns. It was burning, but it wasn't consumed. Some points of interest is, why a bush? 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 Why is it on fire? What is that supposed to tell? You know? And why is it on fire on the Mountain of Elohim? Another point of interest is why every time that scripture says that Moshe is being spoken directly to, it is Yahuwah. No, it's Elohim that's doing the speaking. Let's see if I can find my note. It's supposed to be in here somewhere. I don't see it. But every time the scriptures actually make a notation that Moshe is being spoken to, it's Elohim that's doing the speaking. You know, and I think I brought this one up before, but it was also interesting that it was Elohim that got his attention and drew him over to the bush. It was Yahuwah that drew him over to the bush, but it was Elohim who spoke to him. And you just see this exchange betwixt, Elohim and Yahuwah throughout the passage. Anybody pick up on that? What's that about? That's definitely a point of interest. Why does it choose Elohim in one aspect and then Yahuwah in the other aspect? Just happenstance? Just coincidence? That is a point of interest. Say a lot. That's all I have for you today. Pray with the blessing.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Next lesson.
What's the next lesson?
All right. Next lesson, we're going to go 4 to 6. Read 7 times and give the bare bones. All right. All right, we have any questions? Try.